All right, ladies, I'm so excited to be with you today. And before we get started, the first thing I want to say is that if you paint frustrated or worried or tense, it's going to show up on your paper. So try to stay loose and to stay happy, and don't compare your work to the person next to you. Everybody's is going to look different today, and that's the whole reason God made us all unique. So what you need first is 3 green paints, and Mimi should have those for you. I'm going to use olive green and a sap green and this verde green. So, and these are almost out on my end, so if it splatters, I apologize. And all you're going to do is you're going to take your greens and squirt some out on the paper. I'm at the very end. I've got a lot of that color though. That's okay. Okay. And then with your scruffy brush, from lightest to darkest, you're just going to kind of push it around the paper. You don't need to cover all of the white. That's okay. You're just kind of spreading it out so you don't have any big globs. And then once you've spread it out on your paper, take your scraper, your palette knife, and you're going to just scrape directly down. And it kind of drags the paint through each other, and it starts our muddled background that we want before we put our flowers on top. And if you have too much paint on your palette knife, like I do right now, Mimi might have a plate for you to wipe it off on, or maybe she just has the paper table. I'm going to do the plate today in case I need that green. I just scraped it off and come back through one more time. And see, I have big white spots open, and that's okay. I am taking some of the paint that's on my palette knife and pushing it down to add some to the side, but I'm not too worried right now about making sure to cover all the white. So if you have any ridge lines with the paint that you just put down, you can take your finger and kind of blend them out. And there you go. You got your first layer on. You're gonna do the same with 3 blues on top of our greens. And you might see in the corner up here, I did a second one off camera because I like to work in 2s. I'm pretty sure Mimi gave you girls extra paper so that you could do that also. So I'm using a sky blue, and I'm going to add my drops on there. And then I'm using this brighter blue. And then I'm going to use a very, very dark navy blue. That you can tell is my favorite color because I'm almost out of it. And I like using the varying colors where you have a really light and a really dark, because then when you get your flowers going on top of it, there's going to have depth to your painting. So don't pick blues that are super similar to each other, or there won't be a lot of depth to it. And then again with your scruffy brush, working from lightest to darkest, and you don't have to rinse between. Just smoosh them out on the paper. Because I had a lot of paint, you're going to see me reach over with my light blue and add that blue to my second paper up here in the corner. I'm not sure if that's on camera. And then the next color, that bright blue. I'm gonna do the same thing because I happen to put a lot of paint on that paper. And then the fun thing is when you're working in twos, if both of them turn out and you really love them, it's nice to have two similar pieces framed side by side. Then come into your dark blue. Okay, tapping off on the other paper that I was working on. I don't know if you can see it, I'll show you. So this is the one where I just tapped off. And then take your palette knife again and scrape through. And depending on the pressure that you push down onto your paper, it'll either take a lot of the paint off or a little bit of the paint off. So you kind of have to play with the palette knife and see how much blue you personally want to leave behind. For me, that's a little bit too much green coming through, so I'm gonna, there's just that paint that was on my palette knife, and I'm putting it back on my paper. And then I'm going to come back through again and not press so hard this time, because I want to leave more of that blue behind. Because in the end, these flowers are kind of going to look like maybe they're floating on top of water. Maybe a storm came through and knocked them into a pond, or maybe you're looking at a reflection of flowers on the water. And so you want to make sure you have enough blue on top of your green for it to come through. And then I'm scraping off and coming back again, just till I like the way it looks. And there's no like right way for that to look. It's really going to be personal preference. So maybe you all can compare with each other right now where everybody's is at and see if you want to add more blue back in or scrape more off. And then once you like the way it is, get rid of those ridge lines again by just using your finger to smooth them out. Okay, and then I'll show you. This was the sister to it. So they're not exact, but they're similar, which makes that fun. Okay. What you haven't seen off camera was that this has probably been drying for maybe 5 minutes. Like I just touched it and I have blue on my fingers. So you don't really have to take a break between these first 3 steps. You can keep on moving with the paint wet on your paper. So on my plate, I have those original 3 greens that we used for the first layer, and I have a scruffy brush. And starting lightest to darkest again, I'm gonna do happy, abstract, upward strokes like that, like almost little commas on my paper. And they don't need to be evenly spaced. And then I'll come to my next green and do the same thing, and maybe the paint crosses over each other or blends together, and that is okay. We're just adding more depth, more texture, more layers, giving our eyes something to look at. Come into your third green, do the same thing. And everything is upward, happy strokes. And then you're gonna take a smaller palette knife, and if Mimi doesn't have this, you could use a toothpick, you could use a butter knife, you could use the edge of a like a credit card or a gift card. Those Starbucks gift cards are an awesome thing to do. And you're just kind of scratching some lines in. Sometimes I'll do like a little leaf shape, just adding, again, more texture. The more texture we put into our background, the more our flowers are going to stand out and look. Your eye's going to tell you that, oh, that's a floral shape. So I just kind of scratched all over my paper. And if you put a scratch in and you're like, oh man, I don't like the way that looked, use your finger, blend it out. There you go. There are no mistakes on these. Everything will add interest. Okay, so go put your greens on like that. All right, now you have put your little green happy commas on and you scratched into them, and then you're gonna take that same green you have, and even if your colors are kind of blended, you're gonna take a very wet brush and come into the edge of your green plate, and you're making a very watered down, muddy, milky green color. So for me, I used that olive green and the sap green, but I kind of left out that brighter green. And this, I don't know if you can tell, is super liquidy, like the consistency of milk, maybe. And then once you have that, you are going to splatter down on your paper. And then you're going to tip it and let it run. Let's see if you can see the running that's happening. Let it run down as far as you want. And now you are going to let that dry for about probably 10 minutes. Hopefully Mimi can put a fan on it for you guys. And then we'll come back and we'll start putting in our flowers. These have been in front of a fan for about 10 minutes. And so they're pretty dry. If I press really hard, there's still some green that comes up, but that's okay. And I built my flower palette, which is super simple. You could pick whatever color flowers you're gonna do. Maybe you're gonna do yellows or purples or pinks. Only stick to that color grouping. So I'm gonna do pinks today. So you pick a dark pink, a medium pink, and a light pink. And then you need just some white to kind of blend everything in with later on. So after you have your palette built, you will have a clean jar of water with your scruffy brushes and some size 6 paint brushes that are kind of bendy, smushy. So those are what you need to get started there. And this is not going to be, I'm painting a perfect flower. This is just making a mess on your paper. And then after it dries, we're gonna come back with paint pens and maybe some pastels, and you'll bring it out to really make it stand out like a flower. So right now, don't try to be perfect with your flower shapes. It's really just about getting the color on the paper. And you will also see that I put both of my papers side by side now so that I can work at the same time on both pieces. That's just what I like to do. If there's enough space for you girls to do that, that's fine. But if not, just work on one at a time. So starting with your big, thick, scruffy brush, I go to my darkest color first. And my brush was already sitting in the water, so it was kind of wet. So it's, you can see like the air bubbles. So that is a wet brush with your darkest paint on it. And you're just gonna kind of bounce on your paper. Leaving space. You can kind of see that I focused down here on the bottom, and then I kind of danced up here and went over there. But I left areas purposely empty so that it doesn't overwhelm the paper. I'm gonna just do the same thing over here. But maybe this one, I kind of went opposite direction with it. And again, there's open space in there. Love it. Okay, then I'm gonna rinse my brush. And it's still wet. And I'm gonna come back to my medium color and grab a little bit of that. And in the same area, maybe it touches, maybe it doesn't, I'm kind of following a similar pattern across my page. But, oh, some light taps in the open areas so that it doesn't look too matchy-matchy. And I am just tapping lightly. I am not pushing my brush all the way down. Okay, rinse your brush again. Come back into your lightest color now. And do a similar thing all the way across your page and on your next one. Don't forget to paint to the edges. Don't be afraid to come off the paper. It will make it look more believable if you paint off your paper. Okay, so that was my big brush. I'm gonna drop that down and I'm gonna come back with my size 6 small brush. I'm going back to my dark color again. And remember when we put the greens down, we did those happy upward comma strokes. So we're gonna do the same thing now, but with a smaller brush. And I bet you can, which space do I have? I can do it over here. Happy upward strokes like that. Little commas, okay? You're gonna do those on your paper. Kind of in the same area where you just tapped. Tiny upward strokes. And you could do, so if you girls have heard of Amanda Evanston, she does it's a comma dash dash, comma dash dash. And that, you'll be surprised, but when we come back with the pastels and the paint pens, all of a sudden this will turn into flowers, I promise you. Okay, and then come over here, do your next one. I'm having to work in twos because this is actually going to somebody who asked for 2 pieces that were similar. Happy upward dash dash. And then rinse your brush just a little bit. I didn't worry too much. Come back into your next color, that medium, and same thing, little dashes. Maybe some of those dashes have now fallen into the open spaces, kind of like maybe a petal fell off on the way down to the water, or just you're only catching the reflection of a flower somewhere else. Come over here, next color up. And I like to move quickly because if I slow down, my brush strokes look too forced. I move fast across the page and that helps keep it loose and soft. Okay, come back to your lightest color. And look, I didn't even rinse my brush that time. I just jumped right over. And do the same thing. And don't forget that it is okay to go off the page. Work to your edges. Okay. And then come back into your next one. And when you're working in multiples, it's nice because you can, one, it doesn't feel so precious. If you're only working on one, you feel the pressure to really make sure it's what you want. But 2, you'll end up loving one of them more anyways. Okay, so there were all my lights. Now I'm flipping over and I'm using the tip of my paintbrush and I'm just adding that same motion of those happy upward comma strokes. Just so now my pink paint is becoming friends with the underlayer. Okay, that looks pretty good. Okay, then you are going to take your lightest color and your scruffy brush, and you're going to get some of that white and bring it into the whatever your lightest color is, which that's a really light pink for me. And you are going to make it, again, the consistency of milk. Okay, you see that? Super, super milky. And don't be afraid go ahead and tap it on the paper. But see how I'm doing that? It's mainly really focused only in one section. And then let that baby run. And it's even grabbing as it's running, it's grabbing some of those other pinks and pulling it down and through. It's really cool. And then as soon as you feel like that's as far as you want it to run, that's fine. So I'm looking at this right now and I'm seeing, I wish that this run line would have started further up for me. So I'm gonna come back and grab a little bit more of that pink and adding just a little bit of shake there. See, now it looks, I don't know, it just looks the way I want it to look. Okay, that one looks good. I'm gonna set that over here and bring this guy in. And I'm gonna grab that milky pinky white again. And, ooh, I love the way that one turned out. Okay, tap, 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 let it run. Yes, okay. So now that I have that color done, I like to come back to my darkest pink, take my wet brush, make that liquidy consistency again with the dark pink. And yes, it toned down a smidge because I still had some of that lighter pink liquid on there, but that's okay. And then this guy, I don't like this one to run. I like this one to just be splatter. And again, I was careful. I didn't go ahead and put the splatter all over my paper. You can see open space here and some's up here. Looks good. And then with this one, do the same thing. See, I can already tell. I like this one better than the first one I did. That's okay. Good, okay. So get a fan on these, let this dry for about 10 minutes again. If you have saran wrap, kind of just cover up your plate so that this paint that's on here doesn't dry out because we're gonna use it again. Okay, so now that our papers are dry, completely dry, we're going to start adding our paint pens, our Sharpie markers, and our pastels. But before I actually do it on the paper, I want you all to either practice on the paper that's on the table, or maybe just a scratch piece of paper Mimi can give you. And I'm going to show it to you in a black Sharpie marker. I'm going to use a white paint pen on my actual papers, but this is going to show up better on camera. So there's a couple different ways that you are going to highlight your floral areas. And the first one, Amanda Evanston calls it handlebar roses. So it's this shape. It's like, kind of like that. So you see how it looks like a bit of a hand, like the monkey bars that you see, what are those big motorcycles where you see like the guys with their hands really high up in the air? I think they're monkey bars. Thank you, monkey bars. Monkey bars, handlebars. I personally think it looks like when you're doodling and you do those flying birds. So that's kind of the shape where you're making. I like to do it with my left hand because then it's not perfect. And the more unperfect it is, the better. So that's kind of the shape. Handlebars, flying birds, something like that. Maybe do it with your opposite hand. So there's that shape. Then there's also going to be where it has nothing to do with a rose, but say, I bet you can see this like gray splotch of paint and it has some white in it. Say I wanted to make that into a flower, I could come and I could just do, maybe there's these things that come out around it to make it look like a flower. So that's something you could do. But we're going to do just tracing around different little splotches to make the idea that there's petals there, flowers there, something in the floral fauna genre. Okay, let's do it on our paper. I'm going to switch over to my white pen And I'm going to, let me make sure this is in the, yep. Okay, so I'm looking down here in this big area. And I can see that I could make the shape of a flower kind of around here. Big rows kind of going up this direction. So I'm going to just add some of those handlebar flying bird marks. Let's see if I can focus that for y'all to see. Can you see them? Yep. Just kind of doing that. So I did a bunch kind of like that, and then I'm going to leave an open space right here, and I'm going to do some up here, so then it looks like you can see the cup or the inside of the flower. And again, you don't want this to be perfect because then it looks forced. So if you make a mistake, just say, oh, I meant to do that. I meant to do that. Okay, so I did that one. Maybe I'll come up here. There's something cute going on up here. Look at that little splotchy area. I like that. So I want to highlight that. But I'm not going to do the same handlebars. Maybe I'm just like kind of tracing around some of the edges. There's something there, and I want you to look at it. Okay, and then I see another smaller flower right in there. This is hard to do on camera. So I'm going to do little handlebars. And it made the shape of a flower in there. And then, let's see, I like that one, that one. Ooh, there's definitely one up here. And I can see it kind of going that way. So see how that looks like a flower now? Or a suggestion of a flower. You do not want these to be perfect. I'm going to make this. This doesn't look like anything to me, but I'm going to tell my eye that it's something. So I'm just saying, hey, there is the suggestion of a flower over here. And now, like that would be the center of the flower. Maybe that's the cup like bending up. And those are the other side edges. So let's count. We have a big guy here. 1, I did something there. 2, something there. 3, something there. 4, and then I highlighted that little one down there. Working in 3s, 5s, or 7s. Never an even number. So I like that I did those. And I don't want to overwork this piece. So I'm looking at it, and if I see anything else, it kind of all skirts up there. I highlighted something there, but I didn't highlight anything in here. That's okay though, because it's super active with all the paint splatters. So I'm going to leave this one alone, and probably just come back with pastels. So let's look at this one. And the funny thing is, when I was painting these, I told you all that this was the one I was ending up liking more, but it turns out that now that I put the paint pen on this one, now I'm really drawn to this one. So you'll be surprised at what you end up liking. Okay, let's do the same thing on this one. Now my flowers kind of went a different direction. I kind of went this way on this one. So I see a big flower down here at the bottom, which just happens to be the way I paint these. And so I'm going to add those handlebars over here to say this is a big flower. Okay, like that one. Look at this cutie. Remember how I told you that you could do something like this? I like this space over here. So I'm going to take my white pen, and I am just telling you there is a flower here. And then we'll come up here and do, I love the activation of this. I don't really want to mess with that too much. Let's put something here. This one's a little bit trickier. Okay, I'm going to put something here, but do I want all my flowers going the same direction, or does this guy need to turn in this way or that way? I'm gonna have him still stay out, facing out like the other one, but he's smaller. Okay, and then there's a lot going on here that we could turn into another flower. 1, 2, 3, that would be our 4th. And if I put one there, I'm gonna have to choose what else to activate into a flower. And I could do something here, or I could do something here. We'll see. Let's see what this guy turns into. He's this. Okay. 1, 2, 3, 4. I could do it here, or I could do it here. I'm gonna break my rule, and I'm only gonna, because I'm gonna actually just go off the page. Like, oh, there was something there, but we missed it in our frame of shot. And then I'm gonna do the same thing here. So technically I did more. It's an even number now, but they're both outside of the frame, so it's okay. We did our white paint pens, and now we're gonna come back to that paint palette we had originally, and we're gonna start with our darkest color and our size 6 paintbrush. And your, excuse the kids. That's life over here. Sorry, that's Sophia. You're gonna take the paint and you're just doing small little petal strokes. Not everywhere, but telling yourself, or watching where you put your handlebar. The kids totally took away all my words. I'm sorry, you guys. Okay, let me refresh that. So you're coming in with your size 6 paintbrush and you're doing tiny little happy commas kind of over where you did your white handlebar paint pen stuff. Not everywhere, but just enough that you can come back and be like, oh, those are petals. Okay. And then I moved into I did my darkest and I did my lightest. I didn't worry about the middle guy. And these just add a little bit more texture and are really making those places that you highlighted with the paint pen look more like flowers. You're not completely covering it up. Sometimes I try to limit myself, like 5 brush strokes per flower. Okay, so I did those 2 colors, and then I'm going to come into my white. And I had a little bit of pink on my brush already, plus this is a messy palette. And I made a really light pink, and I'm going to decide which direction I want my sunlight to come in from. And I like going from left to right, and so I will come back through and I'm only highlighting the left side of those flowers. And then I use the back of my paintbrush to scrape through so that all the layers kind of come together. Okay, that looks good. And then do it on your other one if you have a second one. We are on the home stretch here. So now that extra little paint we did on top of your paint pens is dry, and we're going to highlight with some pastels, and then we're finished. I like to use colors that are within the same color scheme as my paints. So I'm going to use this light pink and this dark pink. I might come back in with a little bit of white, maybe. We'll see. But what you'll do with it is Let's use this piece. Remember how we decided that we were highlighting as if some sunshine was coming in through the left side of the page? We're going to do the same thing with the pastel. So I just do that same shape, like the handlebar or the birds flying, but only on the left side of the flower. So I did some down here and I did some up here, but I left that center open so that it suggests a cup shape. Maybe somewhere off the edge. And then I had that little highlight kind of over here, so I just marked a bit on the left side there. I did some white pen there, so I'll come back through. And again, I did a couple down on the bottom and a couple on the top and left the center open so that it looks like a cup shape. And then I had another area I did over here. And I had one there. And I'll hold my paper up so you can see it better. So I did some down there and I did some around the top. I did the same thing there and on the edge there and right there. Then I'm looking at just the fun texture that was in there, and say I want people to, their eye to be drawn to some of it. So I like this little splatter, so I'll take it and I just kind of do these half circles around some of the splatter areas, just to add a little bit more interest. And then I'll take the dark pink and I'm going to come back, and it's more of like the shadow, so it's on the opposite side. You'll add a couple of them in closer to where the lighter pink was, but most of them will be on the opposite side. Not a ton, 3 to 5 per flower, because you don't want to cover everything up, and these guys are small, so I'm really telling myself only 3 on these smaller pieces. So let me show you on here, because it's kind of hard to see on that. Look, if my flower is here, I did a few like that, and then I came around and did a few like that, left the center open. Then I came with my dark pink and I did some ones that shared, but like that. So that's what I did on these, if you can't see it like that. Okay, and then with the dark again, maybe I highlight some of these really tiny little splatters I did. Those are so cute. So let's draw your eye. I did 4, let's do 5 little guys right down there. Not all of them, just some of them. I like that. I really like this pink splotch here, so I'm gonna say, hey, look at that. Is that another flower? We don't know. It's something. Okay, that looks good. Let's set this one aside. I'm gonna work on the other one and I will let you watch me do it. Okay, now we have put all of our pastel work on, and I'm gonna come back with a white paint marker, and I'm just gonna highlight a couple areas, and we're gonna call it good, and we're done. So I liked this little flower shape I did, and I want to tell my eye that it's the center, so I'm going to add a little couple, just a few white dots there. You're going to want to add white dots to every flower. Try not to. It's really hard. I would love to just dot up this page, but I'm not going to let myself. I chose that guy. I might choose, there was a flower up here. I might add just a few in the center there. And I'm only going to do it to one other space. So choose 3 spaces on yours. I did one there, I did one there. You're going to want, your eye's going to say, put something here and make a triangle, because we always try to organize chaos, but don't do that because then it looks too planned. So I'm going to do maybe just this guy up here. I like that. And then I think we're going to call it good on this one. Let's come over and look at this one then. This is the one that I did one of those flower shapes like that. And I did it here. So I want to tell my eye that this is the center of that flower. So I'm going to add some white dots in there. And so I liked that. There was one up here. I'm going to do the same thing. These flowers on this page are definitely harder to see than the other paper. So I'm going to probably have to rework this a little bit, but that's okay. Do that. And then see, this has enough splatter. You don't need to do that, but on this one. But I'll go ahead and do it on this one so you can see. Maybe I want some more stuff going down here. You could go ahead and put some little white dots coming up through there if you want. But again, don't overdo it with the white dots. Okay, I really think I'm happy with where these are headed. Probably gonna call them done. You girls have white picture frames to see if you're finished, but what I like to do when I think I'm done is take a white mat and set it over it and see how I feel about it. Okay, I look at this and I seriously love this area, and I like all this. This doesn't feel activated enough to me. It doesn't really feel like a flower. So I'm going to take my white pastel and I'm going to come down here and try to make my eye see more of that cup shape in that flower. And I just by adding those white lines, I really highlighted that there's an edge to this flower. And I'm probably gonna go ahead and come through, and even though I loved all this, I just need to add a smidge of that white throughout it so that it all shares some similarity. I make up a lot of words when I paint. I think that was a word though. Okay, let's put the frame back on top of that and see. Or the mat. Yeah, now I can tell that that's more of a flower. Part of me wants to add some white dots into that, but I don't think I'm going to. I really don't think I do. And that's all right, because when you look at a picture, you don't want all of it to jump out at you. I really enjoy looking at this upper quadrant. And so I'm going to say, yeah, that's good. I like that one. Okay, let's let that set aside, and let's set the other one in a mat and see if this one's finished. Okay, same thing. Didn't highlight inside there, so I'm struggling to really see it as a flower. And I look over here and I just feel like it needs some paint. So I'm going to take that white pastel and tell my eye that there is a cup to this flower. And because I did that, I need to add a little bit of white in here to these guys. I remember how I said I was struggling to see something there. Just added a little bit of white, and maybe there's just something going on in there. Okay, let's put that back in front of a map and see. Much better. Good, okay. I think I'm happy with both of those. So remember, everybody's is gonna look different. Everyone is gonna have a different style with their brush stroke. Your paint's gonna go down differently. You're going to have different strokes with your pastels. But in the end, once you put it in front of a white mat or a white frame, all of a sudden it just jumps out as an actual piece of art. And you made that. And that's really cool. So anyways, I hope you girls had fun doing this. I hope you have a wonderful time at Mimi's, and happy birthday, Emily. I love you very much. Bye.